Thank you, Dr. Schneider. And I should also say, my mom and my sister are here too, so you guys got to go easy on me in the Q&A. This is where this is this is going. It's my honor, of course, to be here today. I'd like to thank Dr. Bromley and his family, of course, for carrying on this tradition. I'm delighted to be the 39th annual speaker here in this series. I'd also like to thank Dr. Bowman, as well as Stephanie and Nirel for the warm welcome that they've given us here at Claremont, as well as to all of the attendees, both here as well as online. So without further ado, let me jump in. So there are many accounts from Kanaka, Hawaii, or Native Hawaiians, about how we came to be in the islands. In one account, deities named Wakea, a kind of sky father, and Papa, a kind of earth mother, gave birth to some or all of the major islands in the Hawaiian island chain. They also gave birth to Ho'ohoku Kalani, she who fashions the stars in the heavens. She then gives birth to the first human, named Haloa, who dies shortly after childbirth. He is buried, and from his grave grows the first kalo or taro plant, which serves as the most significant source of food for Kanaka. Ho'ohoku Kalani then gave birth to another human, who was also named Haloa. This boy lived and became the father of humanity, or at least the father of Hawaiians. We'll discuss several other creation narratives today, focusing on those that engage the Bible, but this creation narrative is helpful for a number of reasons. For one, it highlights a familial connection between the lands of Hawaii, the foods grown from those lands, and the indigenous peoples. We are kin. Kalo is our older brother. The land is our collective aunts and uncles. Coincidentally, the term for berry and plant is the same in Hawaiian. It's kanu. Haloa is buried, but also planted. He moves from his mother's womb to his aunt's, and he emerges from his earth aunt's womb as a plant to provide for his younger siblings. As younger siblings and those of a younger generation, we have responsibilities to reciprocate their care. The point most relevant to our discussion at this juncture is that Kanaka have been on the islands of Hawaii for some time. From archaeological accounts, we were there around 1,000 years before the first missionaries showed up in 1819. Before them, Euro-American merchants and seafarers had been arriving for at least 50 years. Kamehameha, a warrior chief from the island of Hawaii, brought all the islands under one rule in 1810, which meant that there was a centralized governmental entity that foreigners were negotiating with from around that time forward. Kanaka were also trying to manage the increasing number of foreigners showing up in the islands, bringing things many Kanaka found useful, such as metal, other things they found strange, such as customs of men and women eating together, and other things they found harmful, such as diseases that would kill over 90% of the population in 3 generations. Missionaries from the American Board of Commissioners for Foreign Missions, or the ABCFM, based in New England and made up primarily of Congregationalists, arrived with several things that Kanaka found beneficial, including the capacity to write, promises that a new god would abate disease, and political ideas about how to handle foreigners. Kauikeoli, the son of Kamehameha and the 3rd king of the islands, created a constitution that began, God hath made of one blood all nations of men to dwell on the face of earth in unity and in blessedness. He also famously stated, Heaupuni palapala ko'u, a'oke kanaka pono ana oao, oya ko'u kanaka. Mine is a literate kingdom, the good and wise person, that is my person. Kanaka converted to Christianity in large numbers, so much so that by the 1860s, the ABCFM declared their mission complete. Hawaii had become a Christian nation. It's also worth noting, as a matter of background, that Catholics were officially allowed in Hawaii just before 1840. Latter-day Saints showed up in the 1850s, and missionaries from the Reorganized Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints arrived in the 1890s. Kanaka also had a particularly close relationship with England and petitioned to have the Anglican Church come to Hawaii in the 1860s. Importantly, the ABCFM brought over a printing press in 1820, and in consultation with Kanaka, began designing an alphabet. In 1822, Ke'aumoku, the governor of Maui, was actually invited to be the first to pull the press and print off a tract. Kanaka, Hawaii took to reading and writing very quickly. Education became universal and compulsory in 1841, 7 years before it did in the United States. And by the 1890s, literacy was over 90%. The printing press inaugurated a century of Hawaiian language material that came to include about 100 different newspapers, printing over 150,000 pages of things in Hawaiian, including local reports of social gatherings, world news, translations of Shakespeare, long-running traditional Hawaiian epics, and debates over political issues. This collection of newspaper is likely the largest archive in an indigenous language, at least in the Pacific and North America. Kanaka were also acutely aware that they were dying in large numbers, and so they took explicit action to preserve traditional knowledge in the forms of chants, histories, and other accounts published in the newspapers. The first newspaper, Kaulana, Hawaii, focused on education and Christianity. The very first article in the very first issue, after an editorial introduction, is titled "The Source of Depravity," which, spoiler alert, is sin. The second article is titled "Noka Elapani," about elephants, which includes a full-page spread of an elephant. So Christianity played an ongoing role in Hawaiian language newspapers as the ABCFM controlled the first printing press and as Kanaka converted to Christianity. I provide this background to highlight a number of things. One, Kanaka culture was, as a matter of fact, a robust culture before Christians arrived. Two, despite the challenges presented by interactions with non-Hawaiians, Kanaka culture continued to be robust, with Kanaka adopting technologies they saw as beneficial for their purposes. This included Christianity. Conversion to Christianity spanned a range of meanings for Kanaka, but by and large, Kanaka did not see a significant conflict between being Christian and being Kanaka, especially if they preserved agency in determining what it meant to be Christian. This presentation will explore and build on aspects of these points to demonstrate how Kanaka repurposed Christianity to respond to foreign accounts of Hawaiian origins. Rather than allow foreigners to advance theories of race and theology for colonial purposes, Kanaka developed counter-narratives that made use of the ideas and tools brought from foreign lands. The Kanaka scholar and professor at the University of Hawaii, Kamana Kalani Beamer, uses the term native agency optics to discuss the ways Kanaka adapted foreign systems of government for their own interests. Similarly, I intend to show how Kanaka exerted their agency in rereading aspects of the Bible for their benefit. In Olelo Hawaii, or the Hawaiian language, this might be described with the term ho'okui, which means to combine or stitch together. I argue that this framework of ho'okui is part of long-standing traditional practices of integrating new knowledge that comes to our shores or is brought back from abroad. Practically speaking, I will rely mostly on the writings of 19th century Kanaka historian Samuel Manaiakalani Kamakau and his narratives of creation. I will then situate these narratives in debates of his day concerning the origin of Hawaiians, and then I will conclude with another rereading of the biblical creation by Joseph Ko'oluhi Navahi o Kalani'opu'u, who was writing at the close of the 19th century. His material demonstrates how this process of ho'okui worked to galvanize Kanaka political consciousness in the wake of the overthrow of the Hawaiian kingdom. Samuel Manaiakalani Kamakau was born on October 29th, 1815. He became one of the most important historians of Hawaii, so much so that his birthday has been declared Samuel Manaiakalani Kamakau Day by the state of Hawaii. At the age of 18, Kamakau went to Maui to study with the ABCFM. He was instrumental in setting up a Hawaiian historical society and went on to serve as a judge and legislator in the Hawaiian Kingdom until his death in 1876. He also authored several long-running columns in the Hawaiian newspapers, which covered the history of the Hawaiian people from creation until his day. In the late 1850s, he converted to Catholicism. The motivations for his conversion are not entirely clear, but he wrote about the history of Catholicism in Hawaii. And there are several parts of his history that suggest that one reason he converted is because he believed that Catholicism integrated more seamlessly with Kanaka culture, as it had a much longer history in Hawaii than its arrival in the 1800s suggested. According to Kamakau, Catholicism first arrived on a Spanish ship that made it to Hawaii over 200 years before Captain Cook. And since then, Kanaka had integrated aspects of Catholicism into Kanaka religion. Kamakau writes that after the Spanish arrived, Christianity was combined with the native religion of the people at the time. He then lists a few Catholic practices preserved in traditional Kanaka society, such as gestures made in prayer, the way kahuna or priests bow and sprinkle water in front of an altar, as well as the way that sacred images and plants adorn the outside of places of worship. He then concludes, aspects of Roman Catholicism are exactly like aspects of the old Hawaiian religion. Interestingly, he also adds a note that there are many aspects of old Hawaiian religion that resemble Judaism. This is because it is thought that Judaism arrived in Hawaii during the time of Awanini, chief of Oahu, and that Mokopu was the place the Jews first landed. Kamakau then names the people in the boat and explains that this took place thousands of years before his time. Of course, Kamakau is not the first to relate Israelites with Hawaiians. I will say more about this later, but perhaps most relevant for our purposes is the Mormon idea that Polynesians came from Haggoth in Alma chapter 63. The purported dates of Lehi do fit into Kamakau's dating, although thousands of years is an incredibly broad category. What's interesting in Kamakau's case, however, is that he stopped short of claiming that Kanaka originated from Israel. Instead, Jews and Catholics wash up on the shores of Hawaii, and Kanaka integrate their traditions in with the native tradition. Part of what Kamakau is up to, in other words, is making the claim that Christianity, or biblical religion more broadly, is not new to Hawaii. For hundreds and thousands of years, Kanaka have been taking biblical religion and making it our own. Furthermore, in Kamakau's context where foreign powers are exerting themselves on the kingdom of Hawaii, he is making a political claim that Kanaka have a history of taking foreign knowledge that washes up on our shores and adapting it in ways that are beneficial for Kanaka life. The place where these Jews are said to have landed is significant. Kamakau names the place as Mokopu, a peninsula on the eastern side of Oahu, explaining that it is the place where foreigners first arrived in Hawaii. As I will share with you now, according to Kamakau, Mokopu is also the place where human beings were created. I forgot, I have a handout that needs to be passed out. Yeah. All right. We'll get that distributed. All right. So as I'll share with you now, according to Kamakau, Mokopu is also the place where human beings were first created. In Kamakau's long-running newspaper columns, he finds two moments to talk about the creation of human beings. The first in 1865 and the second in 1869. I'll focus on the 1869 account, noting some of the variations in the 1865 account. The 1869 account begins with a section that lists different Kanaka accounts of creation, including a variation of the Papa and Wakea story I mentioned earlier. Kamakau then goes into an account he attributes to several cultural specialists from different Hawaiian islands, meaning that the account was widely known. In this account, the heavens and the earth are created rather than birthed by a god, or as he goes on to explain, three gods, Kane, Ku, and Lono. And they do it in 6 days before resting on the seventh. Kamakau goes on to list different Kanaka accounts of the names of the first people that were created and where they were created before going into a section titled Ke Kanaka Makamuolo I Olelo Ia Mahawai'ine, the first person spoken of in Hawaii. And so this is on your handout, and I'll just kind of read it. You can follow along here. When the Trinity of gods created the heavens and the earth, Nu'uholani was the land God first separated out. And then came the creation of the lands Kahiki Ku, Kahiki Moi, and Kahiki in Kapakapua Kane. Mokopu was a peninsula. Mololani was a section of mountain land. This land from Kualoa to Kaneohe served as a standard image by which the Trinity of gods spread out and replicated the lands of earth. God saw that all the things that had been created were complete. However, there were no human beings. And so the gods said among themselves that they should create human beings and station them as rulers over all the things they had created. There was one great enemy in the creation of the heavens, earth, and humans, namely Kanaloa. It is said that he created a human being from dirt, and that he wanted this human who was dirt to return to dirt. He did not want the human to rule, and so he brought forth bitter things, thorny plants, and things of death. On the east-facing side of Mololani, where the sun rises, near the shoreline, there is red dirt, which is the dirt that was combined together with blackish dark dirt. It was there that the first human was created. In the old days, the place was called Kahakahakea, but now it is called Pahonua. It was there that Kane shaped the form of a human in the dirt. The image was shaped in the dirt according to the form of the gods. The head, torso, arms, and legs took shape, and their features resembled the gods. When the image was done being shaped in the dirt, Kanaloa said, "Your human will not come into being. You all do not have power. I am the one with power." And so Kanaloa created an image, and the image of the human in the dirt was just like that of Kane and companies. They said to Kanaloa, "Transform your dirt into a human." No human, however, came into being. His image of the human shaped in the dirt was left there, and it became rock. Then Kane said to his companions, Ku and Lono, "You two must obey my words. Respond when I speak. That is how you two are to heed and obey." Here are the words that were spoken by Kane. "I have arrived, now live." Here are the words spoken of by Ku and Lono. "Live." Kane said, "I have arrived, now live." Ku and Lono reply, "Live." It was then that dirt became a living human. At the time when the first human came into being and gods took him to a house, the gods took him to a house that they had made. Haleko was its name. And it was there that the first human lived. There was no woman at the time. However, the man saw his shadow that went along with his body wherever he went in and out of the house, or whenever he went around on the beaches of Nu'upia or Oneava. Indeed, he marveled that his shadow was constantly attached to him. When the man fell asleep, he awoke with a startle to find a beautiful woman sitting by his side. He thought she was the shadow that constantly attached to his side, and that God had transformed his shadow into a woman for him. And so he called her name Keakahulilani, which means the heavenly changed shadow. The name of the very first man was Kane Hulihonua, meaning that God changed the dirt of the earth into a human. In the genealogies, which are many, there are numerous names by which this person is called. In one genealogy, it is Kumuhonua. In another, it is Kuluipo. In another, it is Kumuuli. And in another, it's Kulihana. Kane Hulihonua was the man, Keaku Hulilani was the woman. They are the ancient ancestors of the Hawaiians, as well as those of the lands in the Pacific, as well as those of Kahiki Ku and Kahiki Moi, as well as those of the other nations. There are many things worth discussing in this account. I began by mentioning Mokupu, which means restricted area. This is the portion of land where creation takes place. And as I stated earlier, it's where Kamakau believed a group of Israelites landed. Coincidentally, this peninsula is currently controlled by the US military, where it has become restricted in a whole other sense. But it's not restricted from the US government unearthing over 1,500 graves in their control of the area. It's an aside. Kamakau explains that this area is a standard image by which the rest of the world was shaped. Besides this part of Hawaii serving as a template for other places, the story also claims that the first people were made in Hawaii. This is not just the creation of Kanaka, Hawaii, not just the creation of Pacifica peoples, but the peoples of foreign lands, which is what Kahiki Ku and Kahiki Moi stand for, and the peoples of other nations as well. In other words, this is a not so subtle claim that creation occurred in Hawaii. The very first people of the world, it seems, were Kanaka, Hawaii. The importance of this claim is worth dwelling on momentarily. If humanity began in Hawaii, then how ought the other nations of the world think of Hawaii? What esteem ought Hawaii to have? Kamakau does not make an explicit statement, at least as far as I've seen, but the logic seems readily available. Perhaps one reason Kamakau does not explicitly state such an idea is because he prefaces this account by referencing other versions of the story where creation takes place in different locations. Some of those locations, he notes, do not appear to be in Hawaii. In his 1865 account, the creation takes place in Ololoi Mahani, which is not clearly a place in the islands of Hawaii. The 1865 account also makes a number of interesting moves. It preserves several Christian biblical parallels, such as a trinity of gods working to shape the first man from dirt. The first woman is created from the body of the first man, and she's presented to the first man after creation. There are also several differences, including two of the deities, Ku and Lono, fearing that they might be killed by the third deity, Kane, for not following through on his orders. So in the creation of man, they go out and capture a spirit and stuff it into the body to begin to animate it. The three deities also tear apart the body of the first man in creating the woman. And although they put the body back together, the first woman is named Oe, literally the sound of tearing. The name of the first man is also different in this account, and the difference is significant. His name here is Velahilani Nui, the great hot fiery heavens. This section of Kamakau's account begins with the heading regarding the new heavens and the new earth. Kamakau explains that a new heavens and new earth are needed because the old heavens and earth were destroyed by fire. While this sounds biblical, the destruction here takes place at the beginning of time, rather than what might be considered the end of time as in the book of Revelation. Kamakau explains, it was 19 generations from Kumuhonua and his wife Aloiho until Iva Hinakiakea, who was male, and Umi Vahinaki Ipapa, who was female. At the time, God was filled with disgust and contempt for the unrighteousness of the earth. So God turned the heavens and earth into fire. The heavens and earth raged because of him. The narrative then moves into the creation of Velahilani and Oe. In other words, the larger narrative here is that God created a man and woman whose offspring populated the earth for 19 generations before they became so corrupt that God wiped out humanity and started over. The biblical parallel would be the destruction of the world some 9 or 10 generations after Adam, where God cleanses the world with water, leaving only Noah and those in his ark. In 19th century Hawaii, the Noah story was also very popular. However, this account of restarting creation by fire does not appear to be explicitly related, in part because a year later, Kamakau writes into the newspaper to discuss the genealogy of the Kamehameha family, and he mentions the Noah narrative in relation to Velahilani and Oe, he explains. The genealogies of Puanue and Kubulipo clarify the centuries since the first humans, and the age and time when these people lived is also made clear. Was it before or after Adam? It is both. I believe that Adam was likely first, but in this description, the Hawaiian ancestors are likely first. This is because in the time without light, when there was only darkness, there were people that lived in the dark. Is there any truth to this, or is it false? Well, perhaps some of each. Who were these people? Kupo was the male and Lani Kupo was the female. They had children, and Velahilani and Oe entered the scene. After 30 generations, Konikonia came about, he is Noah, and with him came the floods, known as the Kayaka Hulumanu, Kaioa, as well as the Kayaka Hinali'i. Here, Kamakau situates someone named Konikonia and the floods 30 generations after Velahilani and Oe, not 9 or 10 generations as in the Bible, although he's clearly familiar with the Bible and the genealogies